Hello, everyone. Welcome to Online Seller UK podcast. My name is Prabhat, founder at Online Seller UK, and your host for today. We'll be talking a very interesting topic, which is US e-commerce expansion. And today I'm joined by Scott from launchwithconfidence.com. So, Scott, welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhat. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So, Scott, I think it will be good to start with your introduction and what sort of projects you're working on these days.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we work with non-resident sellers all around the world looking to expand to the US. And as you know, most of them, especially on Amazon, can expand through an entity in their foreign country, the UK, or they can be a sole trader. And so a lot will have different reasons of which they may want to form a US entity. Could be for insurance purposes or other things, or maybe even expanding to other marketplaces such as Walmart. So we do a lot in that space, and interesting enough, I do have to say a new area of interest by a lot of our sellers at different events has been crypto, which is of course a hot subject. So that's a totally different subject, but it all comes into play with US taxation, how do things work, and things of that nature. So what structure, so all these things come into play, but primarily we focus of course on e-commerce sellers and some of their goals with whether it's to sell their business through an aggregator or whatever they want to accomplish. We kind of help them through that whole process to avoid some unnecessary costly mistakes that usually come a year or two later down the road that we all wish if we would have known that now, we would have done things differently, right? That's why we do these things.
Yeah, excellent. So a very common thing for somebody who is selling well on Amazon UK or Amazon elsewhere is to go to the US market, obviously because of the size and the potential of the business there is. So I've seen over the years people trading with an entity within the country they are in. So if somebody in Germany trading with a German entity and so on. So I'm sure there is an advantage having a US entity. Otherwise, you wouldn't be helping hundreds of thousands of people there. So do you want to talk us through some of the benefits of having US entity to trade on Amazon or within the marketplace platform in the US?
Sure. What happens is I'll start with one of the most recent changes is Amazon's requirements for insurance. Now, if you do 10,000 a month in sales, you have to have insurance. Marsh.com was the company that rolled this out last August 2021. And so all sellers are required. A lot of your sellers probably gotten lots of notices. It was supposed to be 90 days. So in order to get, if you're in a high risk category, it's difficult to get insurance maybe in some countries. UK might be an exception because they have some more options there. Australia is a little different. But if you're in a high risk, you may find more expensive. So forming a US company is a way to work with some of the US insurance providers that could lower the insurance cost. And of course, there's things to do. What do you change on the Amazon account? What do you don't change? Do you have full coverage? That's a whole different subject. So insurance is one category. Then we have general liability. So some sellers may have a very large brand in the UK, throughout the EU, and they understand the US opportunity, but also understand US has a little more liability, hence the insurance requirements, and therefore they would like you to people would like to consider separating the liability by having a separate US entity. So they compartmentalize that business through a separate US entity. Again, Amazon, of course, has certain rules when you change the entity, taking the tax interview and the things that have to happen. So that would be another category. A lot of people are selling their business through aggregators. Obviously, if you work through aggregators, they will buy a US Amazon business, whether it's through a US or foreign entity. Some people do prefer to work through US entity as far as legal and things and compliance, as far as that comes into play. Then you get into another category if your expansion to Walmart, or if you're selling on Shopify. Shopify, you get into potentially, depending upon your sales, a lot of sales tax compliance that Amazon sellers used to have, but they don't have anymore. So that's good news for Amazon sellers, or very little, I should say. And so it's a little bit easier with a US bank account to remit sales tax with some of the remitting software companies. But we can work with non-resident sellers, and we work with a company you can wire sales tax payments. But those are a couple common areas around liability. Some people that if they do have their own website and they want a Stripe account, things of that nature, they need their own merchant processing. That's another category that comes into play. So those are the common areas that people will look at that would cause them to want to consider forming a U.S. company.
Okay, so it's for somebody who is ambitious in growth and expanding to multiple marketplaces or even grow too many sales. It's good to form an entity. So if a very quick question, if somebody started with a non-US entity, then starts talking with yourself to form a US entity. So how long normally that process takes?
So the first step, of course, is let's assume we get clarity on the strategy. What are you looking to accomplish? What'll meet your goals? Of course, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so some people have parts and pieces, and we do a strategy call to clarify it. So once we get started, make a decision, our team's very efficient, depending upon which state. Most states are very efficient where the entity itself can be filed within 24 to 48 hours. Of course, we have a very manual process from the standpoint that we look at each filing we do, and even though a lot of people know what they're doing, they still make mistakes on names and certain things and addresses and directors that could impact things, especially on the SS4 for the tax ID number. But the EIN is the one that's kind of the moving target from the pandemic. So it used to be you have to fax it in for a U.S. company. It used to be 5 business days like clockwork. During the pandemic, it got as long as 45 business days. Then recently, we've seen it down to about 10 to 12 business days, and then we follow up with them. And so, and then when it comes to banking, it depends who you're working with. A lot of banks require or online payment gateways. They want not just the EIN, they want the letter from the IRS. It's usually mailed a couple of weeks after, and depending upon which address that goes to and the timing, that can impact banking and setting that up. There are situations where, like in insurance, we don't have to wait for the EIN number completely to be finished, so that can speed up the process. But there are other situations if we're setting up a Stripe account or something that, of course, we want that to be completed. So the process could be from a week or two to get everything formed and in place with our process. And then the banking could be as long as another month later coming down the road. And so then some people, if they need an exemption certificate for something that may come, that's a different process with each state, depending upon if you have most obviously non-residents don't have a social, so that impacts having to fax or email if we needed a sales tax or exemption certificate.
Okay. I think it's not too bad timing wise what you just explained. So once you have some sort of plan, the plan is in place within a month or two. We get sorted. So that's good. So let's talk about the tax requirements. So U.S. tax requirements. So what are the factors that's involved in the U.S. tax requirements?
Yeah. So the factors you get involved are, you'll hear terms about, are you engaged in a U.S. trade or business? Do you have dependent agents in the U.S.? Do you have employees, which most people don't, right? They'll have virtual contractors working probably or virtual assistants outside the U.S. of their team. And so like us, we work with 2 or 3 different tax attorneys and CPAs, and you do get different answers. And some tax things are based upon court cases, some are based upon interpretation. But for example, if you have a single member LLC disregarded, most common, you'll hear of the 5474 and a pro forma 1120 to be filed. And then it depends upon the ownership structure. Is it an individual? Is it a foreign entity? Does the foreign entity file what's called a protective return? And then we can go a little bit deeper in there. But the false perception that a lot of people have is, if I'm selling on Amazon, there is no taxes to be paid, because you have to look at when title transfers, and then you have to look at tax trees. Now, when everything's set up correctly, you end up getting that result. But to say that as a general statement isn't really necessarily true when you talk to a tax attorney and you get deep into it. But in essence, it's just a matter of connecting all the dots to make sure things are done right. And then generally, you will get different answers because accounting firms will be more conservative. Tax attorneys, they won't be aggressive. They just know tax case law, but their price is much more expensive. So we work with both of them, and we have sellers that are, doing $250,000 a year, and some sellers are doing $2 million a month in sales. So depending upon the level of the brand, they want some more level of sophistication. So we have resources in either case. But in general, it can be done, properly. We'll be in good shape. It's situations where, for example, it gets more complex. If we go to Walmart and if we're creating what's called a U.S. taxpayer, now we get a U.S. tax return, U.S. taxes. You technically have something called price transfer rules, moving money back. So, so these are all things that could potentially come into play. The good news, we have resources on these subjects if they come into play. We just like everybody to kind of, when they work with us, to know the full picture up front. So unfortunately with the IRS, if you make mistakes, just like any taxing authority, it's not like they send you a notice the next day you didn't fill this out correctly. You don't find out till 18, 24 months, 2 years later. And that's just the way it works, right? So we want to get it right up front.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the risk is too high to not get it right.
Yeah.
So that's important. So thanks, Scott, for explaining that through. So let's talk about now the verification of the account. So what are, for .com accounts, so what are the different levels of verification that's required when forming a US company?
So this is something a couple of years ago, I worked and trained the Amazon Seller Central reps in the EU when there was still 4 or 5 states left for sales tax compliance. And so in exchange of that, I said, can you send me your internal requirements for verification on an account up front? What's required, what's not required? And so then over the last year or so, we've seen some changes. So for example, address verification, Amazon will send out a 6-digit code to verify addresses. And what they've done through the whole insurance situation is they will have a pop-up that'll say, we may send out, we may verify your address. So you have to be prepared that if they send something via FedEx, UPS to your address, that somebody's has a service like we do to scan that, get it to you immediately so you can verify your account to move on with that change. Then you get into the next level, usually gets into additional verification on a state business license type document that will match the name of the entity a different level. And so this comes into play when we have choice of entity. Some states like Nevada comes with a state license, a state like Wyoming doesn't. Can we get a resale permit or sales tax permit? Wyoming, we can. If that came up, we could. Then you get the one that everybody's afraid of, the dreaded utility bill. So that's right. That's the one that potentially will Amazon say, and you get things like Shopify payments. We want a real address that can be verified and is, or if they want to work with the U.S. taxpayers, a utility bill. And although we haven't seen it requested in the last couple of years of all different situations, because we get the next level is the business license or utility bill, that can come up. We do have the ability to get that in one of the states that we work with, not others, because to get a real utility bill, the definition gets narrower and narrower and narrower, right? So that's the one that some folks are concerned. And the goal is, if you line up with compliance to start, that's good news. But we know as Amazon and the other e-commerce platforms move forward, they do want to double check on things when you change bank accounts and things. So if things don't line up, that's where you get more questions about compliance, because it's their internal process just looking to protect sellers. And of course, the seller, when it happens to you, you see it as a nuisance, but that's just the way it works. So those are a couple of things that could potentially come up. So the goal is to, of course, make sure all these things are in alignment before you make the changes, especially when we do insurance. There's a certain sequence of events to get everything to match up, so you'll be in good shape. And some things like the insurance, sometimes if you make a mistake, they'll just decline something and you can upload things the second day. Some things you just don't want your account to get suspended or have issues with. That's a whole different subject, or just activation issues that take time, right? So we want to avoid some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the verification, like you said, utility bill, one of the difficult one to resolve. So no, these are all good, all good. So I think we can wrap up now. You've given so much information already. So if somebody is to contact you, because everybody's situation is different, and they may have to follow different procedure, different process, and all that sort of thing. So there has to be some sort of one-to-one advice and knowledge sharing there. So if somebody is to get to you, talk to you, so how does it start? How does the process start?
Yeah, so what you want to do, you can reach out to our website. We have a lot of content there, but you'll see on the top tab to book a call. So you can go to launchwithconfidence.com. It does forward to a site we've had for many years, NV Inc. We are based in Las Vegas. We do incorporate in all 50 states, but it'll go to nvinc.com. So it's a short URL, but we go by launchwithconfidence.com. And you'll see book a call. You'll speak to our team. Sometimes I take those calls, our team. That's a free call where it's a discovery call. We want to find out, what do you want to accomplish? Because it is like it's like playing chess. What are all the pieces? What are your goals, short-term, long-term? Because sometimes when you add this, that changes this. And then from there, we'll let you know how we can help you, if we can help you. Sometimes we get a situation where either it's too complicated because there's multiple jurisdictions and things that we may refer to a tax partner. And then if we can help you moving forward, typically if there's a tax questions and things, we'll move to a strategy call, which applies as a free credit towards formation. We'll go through all the numbers and things, and of course the time frame and what we can do to help you out, what support looks like. We also do tax returns. We work with a CPA, so it's a one-stop shop to get everything accomplished. But you can start with booking a call and going to the calendar, and we'll do a discovery call and see if we can help you out or not based upon what you're looking to accomplish. And if we can't, if we have a referral resource, we'll let you know also.
Excellence. Right here. So you've given a lot of information, and again, thank you again for your time today, and I'll speak to you soon. So all the best for now. Bye for now.